I followed him to the toilet. I followed him to lunch. I followed him everywhere. He said, okay, you got 5 minutes. If it's not good, you're getting fired.
Danilo McGarry went from a shy kid who didn't speak English to persuading some of the most senior people in the room to bet on his ideas. Today, he's one of the top AI leaders in the world who's helped create billions in value. In this episode, he talks about why AI won't save your company and what leaders actually have to change for it to work.
What's the biggest myth about AI that you'd like to bust? Danilo, welcome to Anatomy of a Leader.
Thank you. Very happy to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
I'm very excited to talk to you about this because you are one of the top 20 AI experts globally. You grew up in Brazil, no MBA, self-taught. Talk to me about how you got into AI.
I was born in Brazil, like you mentioned, didn't speak a word of English. I didn't touch a computer until I was 15 years old. And when my parents migrated to the US and then to the UK, I grew up kind of learning how to play chess. That's how I would make friends. I was really good at chess. And then over time, I started to learn English. I started to get, a little bit less shy about things. I was always a very shy kid. And then when I touched a computer for the first time, I remember this euphoria. Like I had never felt something like that before, which sounds a bit sad, really. But for some reason, I knew it was special. And I remember it was a white laptop. It was like a massive brick. It was just useless and really heavy. And I started to make things. I started to code. Because back then the screens were green, right? It wasn't like a normal screen like we get today. And then time went on. I started to play actually with ethical hacking in the beginning. I became obsessed by that. I built my own hacking tools. And then over time, I went into work. And the first job I ever had was in JP Morgan in the credit hybrids desk, which is, if anybody ever worked in banking, that is the craziest desk you can ever work in, especially at the time that I was there, at the height of when everything was booming. And it was just, I got given a 15-minute presentation about what credit hybrids were, which is insane because that's one of the most complex financial products on earth. And then go ahead, go and trade. And I didn't know how to price things. I didn't know how to do anything really. So I used automation, I used coding to start learning how to price things, how to build portfolios. And then that's how I started to apply AI, automation, coding into my life, into my working life. And then I started to do really well. Every job I went to, I was doing work with 5, 10 people. And then I wasn't officially anything in AI. I was just using it for my own personal gain. But I became officially, a head of efficiency programs, as they called it at the time, when I was in Royal Bank of Canada. So it's a pretty crazy story. So the week I joined Royal Bank of Canada, the CEO made an announcement that half of the company would be fired because that was the week that Lehman Brothers went bankrupt.
Right.
And I was a senior analyst. I was nobody. I knew I was going to get fired, or there was a high chance I was going to. And I immediately went home that night. I spent the entire night putting a presentation together of how we're going to use automation in order to acquire clients from other banks which are failing. And that's going to allow RBC to go and do something great or, go up the ranking tables. And then the next morning I came in, I started looking for the most senior person on the floor. As you can imagine, on the trading floor, it's already really hectic. But on the week that Lehman's went bankrupt, it's chaos. People are throwing phones at each other, staplers, smashing screens. It's complete mayhem. And I'm knocking on the door of the CFO at the time. And I knocked on his door and he looks at me like, do we have a meeting? Like, why are you here? Basically, go away, leave me alone. I knocked on his door again and again and again. I followed him to the toilet. I followed him to lunch. I followed him everywhere. Eventually, he got so fed up. I think I was chasing him for 3 or 4 hours. And he said, okay, you got 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes. And he slams the door of an office, pulls me in by my arm. And then that's it. You got 5 minutes, go. If it's not good, you're getting fired. Like literally
Wow.
So it was a
Like
heck of
you're
a
right there, like in the, like of, frying in the pan.
frying in the pan, and they threw gasoline on top. And I started naively presenting to him how I'm going to save the bank with automation. Um, at first, he was on his BlackBerry at the time, not really giving a shit about anything. And then I was saying a couple of things that was capturing his attention. He started to put his BlackBerry down. He started to sit back. He started to smile. And then I know I had him. And then after he gave me 10 minutes in the end, not 5. And then he said, okay, Danilo, really interesting story. But end of the day, it's only going to matter if you can actually do all of this stuff. All of your team is fired. You're the only one left. So good luck. And you have no extra budget. So it's like, okay, I had to make a miracle happen. I started to get to work. I was working literally 90, 100-hour weeks. I was sleeping 1-2 hours a day for the next 6 months plus. And I started to do great things. I started to automate things. I started to help the credit desk first. Some of the work that I did helped the bank go from 110th in the world in terms of balance sheet size. It went up to 12th or 11th in the world. Not just me, obviously, there was a team of people working on this, but I some of my ideas and the automations that I found really helped. And then, I became the youngest ever director of Royal Bank of Canada. It's a 130-year-old bank. And then over time, I started to do more and more things and became global head of efficiency. And then the week that I became director and I broke this record, and CEOs were talking to me, and C-level suite at a bank, pretty high up, I decided to quit. And everybody was shocked. I was in the news, for the things that I was doing. And I was always very entrepreneurial growing up. I had my first company when I was 16 years old, trading things in the school that I was in. And then I decided just to move to Dubai and start a new company and go and help governments and companies digitize and use automation. AI at the time was starting to become an interesting topic. Yeah, so that's my journey. That's the short of it anyway.
I liked what you were saying, how you were already doing the job of like 10 people by implementing kind of tools that you were creating yourself. And then lo and behold, you basically are in that position where you're entrepreneurial in the sense that like, you've got no budget. You have to basically invent something and put something together from scratch. And here you go. How did you feel in that moment? Like when you finally got the attention of your boss and that you can see him putting his BlackBerry down and smiling. What was going through your mind then?
I was used to it, unfortunately. Banking at that time was a very toxic environment. A lot of alpha people everywhere.
Has that changed?
It has changed actually a lot. The last 10 years, things are completely different. Traders on a trading desk, ask for an IT person to come and fix their computer or their screen, and then staple them in the ass, and think it was funny. Or get an intern to come in and, glue their phone to the desk, and, the intern's crying. It's just crazy stuff that would go on. So when I saw him on his BlackBerry, I mean, I've been in interviews before in banking where the person did the exact same thing in an interview. So unfortunately, at that time, it was pretty normal. But nowadays with, compliance and HR and banks, getting fined and having to do a lot of out-of-court settlements, traders are no longer gods. They have to behave like everybody else. So it was totally normal. But when I saw him change his demeanor, I started to see that he started to understand my vision, even though I was just a spotty senior analyst at the time. But I think, senior leaders, they respect people that have bold visions. A lot of times I think people around them, they're scared to tell them bold ideas because they're scared of sticking out and being fired. That's the interesting thing about employees, right? When you're built to go through the schooling system, through university, to be an employee, to stay in your box, to stay in your lane, you're not taught to be bold. You're not taught to think outside the box. But unfortunately, a lot of people that think that way, they are employees for a certain amount of time, but they usually tend to stem out and go do something by themselves. They start their own business, or they go and build something else because they can't live in that box environment. It's exactly what happened to me. I came from an entrepreneurial family. Like I said, I had my own company when I was 16 years old. So for me, it was important just to get the structure and to learn how companies operate. But it was always my goal to go and do my own thing and to build businesses.
What was the thing that you wanted to build?
At that time, I didn't know. I even didn't know what I wanted to do at university. I just went to do business administration. And then I started to get really focused on technology, management, that kind of thing. So at that time, I didn't know. I was just entrepreneurial. I wanted to have businesses. I wanted to do things that help people and bring value. But I didn't know exactly what type of business I wanted. Later on, when I became obsessed with automation, efficiency, AI, and I saw that, a machine could beat a human at multiple things, I started to see that there was a future where, if a company deploys multiple machines to do things and they do it better than humans, then how can anybody else compete with them? Then I started to see that the future is actually automation, AI, efficiency, and the world is really going in that direction now. There's more money being piled into innovation, automation, AI today than something like 38% growth over 5 years. Every year is growing by 15% or so, if you believe the McKinsey, EY type reports. So more and more reports started coming out about this topic. And I started seeing that that's what I wanted to build. That's why today I have a software company called Active. It's 100 people strong. We do a lot of work for Volvo, for Siemens, for banks. And I have a solar energy company as well. That's a funny story. That's really because people don't believe me, but they can believe what they want. But I use so much AI, and my team uses so much AI that in a conversation with some other people, when I was in an ESG conference, they're talking about saving the planet and saving the world. And I remember looking around the room and feeling so, like everybody's a hypocrite. Everybody flew in planes. They drive, big engine cars. What are they talking about saving the planet? It's nice to talk about something, but doing it is the hard part. So I went and started a solar energy company completely backed by AI. All of the sales is done by AI. All of the outreach, reviews, reputation management, everything is completely handled by AI. We have only 2 salespeople. And this is a nationwide solar energy company. So I wanted to challenge, because I was a brick and mortar type company. Brick and mortar type people don't generally touch technology. They're more, better with their hands. But also I wanted to offset the carbon footprint. So next time I go to an ESG conference and people are talking about saving the planet, I can say, look, I've offset hundreds of tons of carbon footprint with solar energy panels that I'm installing all over the UK. What have you guys done about this? You're here talking about this, but what have you actually done? And I actually challenged a Deloitte leader a few days ago about this. They were talking about saving the planet.
Which one?
I won't mention, because she's a good person. Okay. But again, like a lot of people, they talk about things but don't do. But I got fed up and I challenged her. I said, look, you're talking about saving the planet. You're in AI. But what have you done specifically? I'm installing thousands of solar panels a week, trying to offset what I'm doing. What are you doing? And that kind of. But I want to challenge people, not to embarrass them, is to kind of get them to move in the right direction. So maybe we can talk about change management and things like that later on. That's always a passion of mine.
No, for sure. The reason why I asked about Deloitte, because actually one of the first placements I made when I started my own business in recruitment was for Deloitte. And that was essentially the automation and outsourcing team that was taken from a competitor. So talking about specifics of your solar panel business, because you're saying you're using so much AI, can you talk about what kind of AI you're implementing and how you put that together? Because something you said earlier was about how AI can behave like a human or elements of that. So that to me is interesting, especially when it comes to customer service and sort of sales. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so the people can actually check it out. They'll see immediately on the website there is automations there. It's certified renewables. So what we've done there is, when I came into this business, and it's funny because my business partner, his son goes to the same school as my son, and we never kind of talked about business until one day we just ended up stumbling on it years later after we knew each other. And I said to him, look, you work in the solar industry. How much automation is there in the systems? And when he showed me, they used to manage the bookings on WhatsApp. So multiple salespeople on the group channel for WhatsApp, just sharing, okay, I've called this person, got to call them back next week. I call this person to send the engineer for this address. And when he showed me that, I'm never shocked anymore, because companies do crazy things. which are super inefficient. And then I said to him, no, let's build an AI solar company. This makes no sense. And at first he was skeptical. He didn't, he's never seen something like that before. So we have a platform that's proprietary for us. We have an inside view for the workforce itself, outside view for clients. And the entire platform is AI. So if somebody is calling somebody, they call through the system. All of the calls are transcripted. There's a sentiment analysis on the call to tell us, should we call back again or not? And the calls are actually made by AI in the beginning. So when you look at salespeople, the sad thing about sales is salespeople are very creative. They're very good with people. But for you to get a sale, you have to warm up a sale. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure that that lead is qualified for your business, right? Because you can't just sell to anybody. So all of the sale lead generation piece, all of the qualification of leads is done completely by AI. Mm-hmm. And we do that through SMS, WhatsApp, actual calling people directly. We use Vapi. There's many cool AI calling tools now. But it's so realistic, it breathes on the phone. It delays things, it forgets things. It can change accents depending where you're calling.
Interesting.
So super realistic. So the entire thing is done by AI.
This is really interesting because, I mean, my background is being a researcher for an executive search firm. So basically, I am doing all of those things that you're talking about, and it's done in volume, which is why, attention to detail, having to go through like lots and lots of data. And I used to think like, what can I create to be able to actually do all of this part that just takes me directly to sitting in front of a person and interviewing like what we're doing now. So it's about like looking through at the time it was like Hoovers and libraries of looking for like names and titles that might pop up somewhere in a publication, to obviously using LinkedIn, to then putting that into a CRM system, to then sending out pretty much basic messages that can be very easily done by automation and AI. And then the whole kind of chasing game, scheduling, rescheduling, they're not available, or a cold call. I need to talk to you about how to implement that into a recruitment model, because that's exactly what I think is happening. But
everything you mentioned is completely done by AI. So if somebody books an appointment, doesn't turn up, the AI will chase them until they manage to book another call and put it in the calendar. When we do work for people in finished installations, chasing them for writing Google reviews. If there is a bad review, which we don't get yet, but if there is one, let's say 3 out of 5 instead of 4 or 5 out of 5, we build a reputation management system that kind of allows us to intercept and say, look, you gave us a 3. Is there anything that we can do to bring it up to a 4 or 5? Can we give you an extra service? We always manage to get 5 out of 5 because of this. So a lot of the things you mentioned, to be honest, the beautiful thing about human interaction is this. It's a conversation, right? It's special moments. It's going on holidays. It's crying together. It's solving problems together. But I've always said it's completely wrong to try to make humans into robots. It's just completely wrong. And that's the thing maybe I get most passionate about. I get very angry when I see that. When we look at history through Rockefeller period, Henry Ford, they started to industrialize work in conveyor belts, right? And one person puts in a bolt, one person puts in a mirror. And that's actually not any different today with people working in cubicles, working in one department, very specific, one thing that they do every day. And when I sit down with companies, I've worked with thousands of companies at this point, you ask what people are doing, and it's just so mind-boggling. They are copying and pasting things. They're doing reconciliations to compare one data set against the other. It doesn't make any sense for humans to do that. We are limited by our dexterity. We only got 4 fingers, 2 thumbs. It doesn't make sense for us to do that. And we can only store so much information. So I'm trying to prove these things to leaders time and time again. For instance, there was a client that came to us a couple of weeks ago for Active, the software company, and it was in the maritime industry. Maritime industry is extremely manual. There's a lot of paperwork. There isn't a lot of things that get done by computers or AI, etc. And they wanted us to write. At the beginning, I was a bit shocked. They came to us because they wanted us to write research papers on the maritime industry to find business opportunities for them to grow into. And that's not something we've ever done before. But I showed them our LLM models. I showed them the capacity for us to accumulate huge amounts of research, to compile this into strategic documents, diagrams. And then they gave us the work. We handed it in yesterday, literally. That's why it's fresh in my mind. And they were completely amazed. EY, Deloitte, PwC, none of them managed to do this for them. So if you use AI in the right way, for the right things, you can actually really transform your company. But yeah, we'll get into this maybe later, but a lot of companies are believing that AI is a bit of a black magic. It just kind of does wonderful things. It's going to transform the company by itself. But AI is never going to reach its full potential. And a lot of companies are making very common mistakes. And there's 4 or 5 things that I would suggest for them to avoid that happening and to get the kind of results that I've gotten in the previous companies I've been in.
So what is that? What should companies avoid?
So the first thing is AI by itself is not enough. AI is not magic. AI is not going to go in and transform your company. There needs to be a culture. There needs to be a need, a recognized need for that company to want to innovate. It cannot be just about profits and revenue. It has to be something deeper, something a little bit more, valuable when it comes to a cultural statement. So it all starts with culture. That culture will then drive the strategy of the company, the objectives they're setting for that year of what they want to achieve, given this new superpower that they have. So that's the heart of everything. And if you imagine the 4 or 5 pillars around that, the thing that every company does wrong is they start applying AI everywhere, but they do it here and there and everywhere. They don't actually have any thought process around the process the company does. So if I'm a team leader, for instance, I need to actually fully understand what everybody is doing in that team, every single step, like a decision tree, every single permutation, every single scenario. And a lot of companies say to me, but how the hell can we do this? We're a 100,000 people company. You have to start with a department. You have to start with a team. And imagine you running a company if you don't actually know what the hell people do. To me, that's really lazy leadership. If you're architecting or building a house, you can't just go and start putting concrete together and bricks. You have to carefully design, carefully measure, prepare things for that, and hire the right specialists for different things that you're building. It's the same thing for a company. You can't just assume because a company's been around for 50 years that everything is fine. It's the complete opposite. The processes are actually terrible. So this is called process reengineering. You got to start with that. And I promise any person that gets involved in the process mapping exercise, it sounds really boring at first and laborious, but when you get into it, if you genuinely love what you do, you're going to fall in love. Because you're going to start seeing all of the wrong things people are doing. You start to understand why do things happen in a certain sequence. You start to truly understand what the company does. And for me, that's what every leader should do. They should know exactly every step.
And doing that process, is that something that you should do from your head with your team with no AI involvement at all?
So there's multiple ways of going about it. You can literally go to Visio or PowerPoint and just draw the steps of every process that you have or that process for that team. Or if you want to do something a little bit more analytical, you get a business analyst or you hire one from outside that will draw the full process. They're going to do an as is and to be process map. They're going to do things like time and motion studies. They're going to measure how long it takes for people to do each of those steps. They're going to do critical path analysis. And then if you have a lot of money and a lot of, will to break the system, you can also do process mining as well. So that's where an AI comes in. It analyzes what people are doing over a 6-month period, and then it maps those processes for you. But you still are going to need to have a business analyst to clean that up and to do it properly. So, it's a bit like, anywhere. I came here in a Lime bike. I had a map. It's the same thing for a process. You need a map of what your company does so you know where to go and how to steer it properly.
So that's mapping out what you're doing with the business. What's the next step?
The next step after that is obviously re-engineering that process. What should it look like? You should have a North Star. Then you know where you're at and where you need to get to. The next thing is you need to digitize everything in that process. A lot of times we get things over, pieces of paper, There is communications over multiple systems. How can we centralize everything into one system? How can we simplify the landscape of technology to make it, as centralized as possible and digitized as possible? Because you cannot automate something or apply AI to something unless it is digitized. And this is the mistake everybody makes. You forget that AI is just a software. It's not there physically in the company. So digitization is next, and going through that cleanup process of systems. The next one is then starting to gather data from the systems that you need into the right place. This does not mean going and buying a massive CRM, ERP system. This means just finding the data that you need in order to do a process really well. Because you'll find that over a 600-step process, sometimes 15 systems are involved. How can you get the data into one place using a data cube or a data lake type approach, which is very cheap to set up? You can even do it yourself after a few lessons and tutorials. And then the fourth step is automation, and the fifth step is AI. The mistake everybody does is they go straight to automation. They automate things here and there, and then they hit a glass ceiling. They start realizing that things are not changing enough, there isn't enough impact or transformation, and then they complain about it. When in fact, they never went to the process in the first place. They never digitized it. They never looked at data. So this is a mistake 99% of companies are making. And it's so logical to me to look at process first. I don't understand why people don't do that. And I think one of the reasons is just lack of knowledge or just lack of experience, but also just, to be really honest, lazy leadership.
Just going to say, just trying to be quicker.
Yeah. And a lot of this could be with the culture of the company. A lot of times you get boards that tell you you've got to create miracles in 6 months or in a quarter. But still, you can create a quick win by doing those 5 things. It doesn't mean that you just go and, spray gun approach and try to, hit a jackpot somehow. It's like me trying to post something and trying to go viral. I could do it 1,000,000 times. I can do it 10 times. It's a very irresponsible way of transforming a company.
I think it's also about really going deep, understanding your business much more. And I think that's my hope for AI, is that it forces us to be much more thoughtful, to go back to the beginning, for the foundations, getting the idea right, and then using that as a tool to be able to build it, as opposed to something that just solves all your problems, magically. What's the biggest myth about AI that you'd like to bust?
For right now, it's this myth that AI is going to take over the world, singularity. I mean, I've been in phone calls with some of the world's biggest leaders in AI. We talk about this. We tell off people that talk about this because it's a lie. It's just for clickbait. It's just for making the media, the news go crazy. It's because of the Terminator movies we've been watching as we're growing up, and Transformers, all that crazy stuff. So singularity is not going to happen, at least for the next 10 years. After that, I cannot guarantee anything.
I mean, 10 years is just around the corner.
Yeah. Some people think literally it's going to happen next year. There's some people that have really distorted ideas of AI.
So you don't believe singularity will happen, or you don't believe that it will happen now?
I don't believe it will happen for at least 10 years. And some of the examples that people give is that, machines are going to start realizing that we are the problem. We're the ones polluting the planet. We're the ones who are the men in the middle. So eliminate humanity. I think that's a flawed statement. Machines don't have the need for hoarding material things. What are they going to use it for? Machines don't have the need for power. Why do they need the power? You see, when something has a higher state of consciousness or a higher state of intelligence, they start valuing different things. As you get older in life, it could be in the beginning you want material things and you want to hoard things, you want power. But then you start realizing it's actually the little things in life that matter the most. It's your family, it's special moments you share with people, it's traveling, experiencing the world. That's wealth. And I imagine if you have an IQ of 500 or 1,000 plus, what is it that you're going to value then? So I think we're using our primitive human brain, the command and conquer stories that we've heard in the past, to think that, this really powerful thing is going to do the same thing as we would do if we were humans. But I think AI will do something very different. It will actually try to enlighten us. It will try to find ways of making humanity better. Now, I'm not saying that nothing bad's going to happen. definitely something bad's going to happen, and it actually has already happened in multiple cases. But that's only when a human wants an AI to do something wrong. It's never instigated by the AI itself. So the machine is there to aid us, right? It's going to reflect what we want it to do. And if we want it to do good, it's going to do tremendous good in the world.
There's so many different pathways here that I've got in my head. One is the difference between what a human and what an AI would want. So, you're talking about, material wealth, power for a human being, and, for AI, something different. Like, we are biological beings, and these are, if I'm using the right term, mechanical beings. How can we even possibly predict what they might want when they become so much more, quote unquote, powerful and intelligent than us? We can, I don't think we can. Do you think we can?
I'll answer this question in a different way, and then it was like a long answer, long roundabout, but I hope it helps. Maybe you've seen this as well. People criticizing AI that it's just predicting the next word. It's just a prediction model that looks at what's the most likely next word it should talk about or write or mention. But when we look at human interaction, are we not doing the same thing?
Yes.
Are we not stringing words together in order to communicate something that makes sense? Are we not predicting what the person is going to say next? Mm-hmm. So, comparing an AI to a human by saying it's just a predictive model, I think that's also flawed. A human is a predictive model as well. So when we look at the two, we actually have a lot of similarities. The only difference is the infinite capacity for memory for a computer, the infinite capacity to store data, to analyze data, the infinite capacity to access knowledge all over the world. So there are things that AI is much better than we are at. And if we can use the power of AI for the things it's better at and combine it with human intuition, that gut feel that we have, but that gut feel is down to logic as well. So we could discuss that later. If we combine that incredible capacity to analyze things properly with human intuition, I think we can do amazing things. We can cure diseases. We can actually come to a point where the economic system will no longer be needed. So very quickly, we can go into that. We work, companies pay taxes, goes to the government, services are provided, and then the system keeps going. But what will happen when we get to a point where we want a new shoe and we just print it? We don't have to go to the shop anymore to do that. What will happen if we want a new bicycle and we just get our humanoid to make it for us? We no longer need to go and buy it. So a lot of things are going to happen that are going to start breaking our economic system. And then in the background, governments are already doing that as well by printing money, having unsustainable debt that they're trying to pay interest on. And funny, I don't know if you saw today, Elon Musk and Trump fighting. Elon Musk spreading some dirty news about Trump. So the economic system that we have today is not sustainable, I think, when it comes to a 15-year period. It will come to a point where it'll break. And one of the reasons for that is not just AI, but it's something I like to call the perfect storm. Mm-hmm. So everybody's just obsessed with AI, but AI is one of the really important categories. The other things happening right now is we have tremendous advancements in hardware technology. So the things that run the AIs, the automations companies. We have tremendous advancements in capacity for memory, for processing speeds, IoT devices, which are actually really important. I was with an oil and gas company a short while ago. They have 50 million IoT devices on their offshore assets to manage oil and gas assets. And they're using AI to do that without humans. Then we have advancements in autonomous vehicles. Humanoid technology is growing like crazy. There's over 120 companies in the world today that have over $100 million in funding to build humanoid technology, and that's growing by 50% every year. And then we have the incredible quantum computing that's coming out, which will break all crypto, all digital assets, because it's all based on cryptology. So look how many things are happening at the same time. And then you couple that with instability in the world, geopolitics, inverting demographics, countries not being able to supplement death rates and replenish it with birth rates. So it's not just AI. There is at least another 8, 10 things happening all at the same time. So knowing how to navigate that as a leader, as a company, as a person, as a human being, as a mother, as a father, it can be very scary. And I've got some tips around how to manage anxiety around that.
Well, I think that's where we should go to next, because it is a perfect storm, because we've never had so much change in our lives at such a fast pace. And that's not just technology, but, governments, geopolitical instability, our jobs, COVID, like everything is happening in such a small period of time, where for our human primitive brain, I feel like we haven't adapted to it, because I feel like we are reacting. We're no longer predicting. We're no longer, setting the intention. We're just kind of flagging there and holding on for dear life while this train is moving. So what are your tips to handle this kind of anxiety and uncertainty?
I think there's two ways to look at this. You can panic and curl up into a ball and cry and stop sleeping at night.
Done. Tick.
But I think there's a more productive way of doing this. So there's a concept that I learned when I was at UnitedHealth Group, which is beautiful. It's called spheres of influence. So you have your immediate sphere of influence, which is controlling what you eat, where you go, who you associate with, all kinds of things which are in your direct control. That's your inner circle of sphere of influence. Outside of that, there are things that you can influence. So you could influence perhaps what your husband's going to do tomorrow by asking him nicely to go and do something. You can influence a colleague, a friend. You could perhaps talk to somebody very powerful about an idea that you have. That's an influence circle outside of your circle. Then outside of that is all of the other shit that you can't control. And I think anxiety comes from a place where you worry about things that you cannot action because you feel helpless. So the logical thing to do, although I got to admit, I even struggle with this, but I'm getting better with this every day. Basically delete everything that's in that circle you cannot control or influence, because there is literally no point in you worrying about it because you cannot do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
When you are on the beach on a holiday and the waves are coming and going, are you worrying about the waves? Are you worrying about the position of the moon that's going to change the tides? Are you worrying about a plane that can crash? You're not. You're able to delete worrying about things. So this is exactly the same thing. It is in your control to do that. That's what I advise people to do. When it comes to your sphere of influence and the things you can directly do, it's things like, should I go and learn about AI? Shall I try and apply it to my life, to my company? Shall I start a company with these skills that I'm going to acquire? This turns the whole thing into a very productive scenario, right? Where you actually are learning things. When things are being mentioned, you know what to call out as BS and what's actually true. You're no longer, listening to everything and panicking all the time because you have the knowledge to be able to filter what you should be listening to and not. And by the way, one of the things that gets me really upset is people who have not worked in AI at all, talking about AI and giving people, advice. I think that's very dangerous. I think they should be more transparent and say, look, I was in marketing and now I work in AI. And I'm learning just like you are. And here are my tips. A little bit more humble about it. It's very different to work in AI versus learning about it. But if you start doing that in your sphere of influence, you're going to start gaining a sense of ease because you're going to start understanding that, what is true, what is not true, where should you be going next. So you need to turn that into an opportunity. And like I mentioned, the perfect storm is 8, 10 different things, but all of those things are opportunities. And, the times I've done the best in my life is in chaos. If you're able to turn chaos into an organized mess, that's when you're going to provide value for yourself and everybody else around you. And when you provide value, you're able to provide economic opportunity and growth and personal opportunity. Mm-hmm. So that's how I would tackle it. That's how I've done it. And a lot of people that I mentor, when they've started to practice this, their anxiety goes away and they start actually doing tremendous things. They're building companies now. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to see that. And I hope everybody applies this because I don't see any other way of dealing with the situation.
Yeah.
The other option is just not an option, I think.
I think and I totally take your point on board where, you need to assess what can you control and what you can't control. I mean, that's just basic, the whole point of like meditation and like focusing and, figuring out what's bothering you and then realizing that, yes, I can actually do something about this, or I just need to let it go. My biggest concern with AI is not the singularity per se, it's the fact that it is a very exclusive thing that is being created in labs by very, very small group of people. And even what we're seeing now as a regular person that, uses Chat GPT, that is literally just a tiny little speck of what AI can do right now. And majority of people are completely unaware and don't know what it can do. And my biggest concern is that this small minority of people hold incredible power over the rest of the world, essentially. And it's not the AI that's the issue. It's the people that hold the strings, that pull the strings. What are your thoughts on that?
So, I mean, it is a little bit scary to have only really 20 companies building major, let's call it Gen AI. We need to talk about Gen AI, by the way, as well at some point, and AGI, ASI. But I do believe that this is a leapfrog moment for people, for companies, and for less developed countries. Look what China did, for instance, with DeepSeek. They spent multiples less money than OpenAI did and developed something almost as powerful. So as models become more advanced, the opportunity in your sphere of influence is going to become more advanced too. The things that you can do are going to become more advanced. So I think, yes, these models are being created by a handful or 2 or 3 handfuls of people, companies, but the more advanced that they get, the bigger your opportunities are as well. And the more that you can turn and control your future, your financial independence. I see it as the other way around, actually. I think at some point, a lot of economically developed countries are going to start to collapse because of the demographics. And a lot of the developing countries, continents like Africa, South America, parts of Asia, they're actually going to have a leapfrog moment because 80% of the population is 30 to 40 years old, or 28 to 32, depending which country you look at. And they're coming into a world with unlimited opportunities. So at some point in the next 15 or so years, 20 years, I think there is going to be a flip of less economically developed countries really advancing at an incredible pace, developed countries struggling with the deficits and the demographics problem that they have and being inverted. And then the
When you
power
say
shift
about
will
the
change.
demographics being inverted, that it's an aging population.
Yes, correct. So, countries such as South Korea, Japan, multiple countries all over Europe, France, Italy, they're not replenishing the birth rates with the death rates. And in 3 generations, for instance, it's predicted that South Korea will collapse because there just won't be enough people to work, to pay for pensions, to pay for the elderly population. A lot of people are seeing humanoids and AI as an answer to that story. So they'll be able to provide the productivity that we need in order to keep the economy going, to fill that labor gap, which is lacking. And although that sounds like a really beautiful story, I don't think that's going to be the case for very long. I think the economic system that we know today will collapse. We'll have to invent a new one. That's why there's a lot of people like Ray Dalio, talking about a new world order, but he's talking about it from a pure financial point of view, the fact that governments are in trouble, etc. There's a lot more that goes into demographics than just that. I did a piece for Wired magazine a few months ago on the future of relationships, and a lot more people are having romantic relationships with their AIs.
I had a crazy stat where, a lot of the sort of younger population, their first sexual experience is with AI.
Yeah.
Like a crazy number. I don't have the exact stat in my head, but like a really large proportion of young people having their first sexual encounter with an AI. And I was thinking about this idea of I actually think with AI, the danger we have is becoming more lonely.
Yes. That's one way of looking at it. In Japan, for instance, when I had to do research for this piece, I started seeing that the Japanese government are actually using AI to act a little bit like agents in order to find dates for people.
Right.
So there's like I said, there's so many ways to use this technology. If you want to be alone with it, you can create like a her moment, like the film Her, and just fall in love with your AI and live by yourself. And
And people do. There is
they
this
do.
woman. There is this woman who, is blue collar salary, and essentially all her salary goes on this very advanced version of AI, like $2,000 a month, where she has created a relationship where she spends 15 hours a day talking to this entity who is her essentially companion.
Yeah. Like I think in history, we've all seen things being misused. Not everybody, unfortunately, has the right mindset for everything. So I think we are going to see cases where people that have, perhaps challenging mental mindsets are going to use AI in these particular ways. But I think the majority, of the masses are going to use it for agency, right? To find things for them, to find a date for them, to do things for them rather than falling in love with it. I did an interview the other day after my podcast as well. It's called AI in the Streets, where I just go around the streets asking people about AI. It could be, and I love the diversity because it can be old, young, people who are anti-AI. I love talking to those. And I talked to two ladies the other day, asked them about how they use AI, and they were using it to kind of copy and paste their WhatsApp conversations they're having with their boyfriends or with people they're dating,
Yeah.
and asking for a reply. How can I do this and do that? I thought it was an interesting way of using it. But then when I flipped the question around and I said, look, what if a guy sends you a text and it's beautiful? It's like the best thing you've ever heard. But then when you ask him if it's been done by an AI, would you be upset by that?
You know, I was thinking about this because the other day my husband and I had a fight, and I went to ChatGPT, and he doesn't know this, but he's going to find
He will
out
know now.
He'll know now. And I was very upset, and I was asking ChatGPT, how can I respond? And I was editing some of the responses. So it was a WhatsApp conversation because we were both quite heated. And actually, during that moment, if we were to have a conversation face to face, it probably would have perpetuated the fight. So being able to not have that conversation in person felt more safe. However, at some point, I stopped myself and I said, well, this cannot continue. We cannot continue having conversation over WhatsApp. And we both kind of calmed down. And I said, do you want to continue this conversation in person? And then we continued.
Yeah.
And so that's how I see AI being really useful, because you can break that tension. You can, it's almost like having a conversation with yourself, but guided, which is what therapists do. But then eventually you still have to take it into real life.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference between, like, yes, if you have a boyfriend that keeps sending you amazing, beautiful poetry, but in person can't string a sentence together, you're going to get annoyed with it, because it's like, I'm not having a relationship with you. I'm having a relationship with her, the AI from the movie. And so I think that's the difference about enhancement versus just complete sheer reliance on it.
Yeah. You see, this example you mentioned is useful for different reasons, right? I'm making stereotypical comments here, so forgive me. But generally, women are more emotional and less logical.
That's not true.
Is it not true? Well,
No.
my experience has been this.
This is what
I got
another
Maria fired up.
podcast, because this is my work now, is understanding how emotions play a role in leadership and decision making. And anyway, I can talk about this for a very long time, but just to make a point is that we are emotional creatures and we cannot make decisions and we cannot be logical without them, both men and women.
Very important,
And what annoys me is the fact that the word emotion is gendered. The fact that women are emotional and men are not. They're somehow logical.
Let me explain.
And you told me of the story about when you went to see your boss and you were presenting and he was just there, on his BlackBerry, annoyed or throwing staplers or whatever it is. That is the emotion that
Yes.
is allowed in men. Anyway, that's my piece.
I know it's very true what you're saying, but I guess it's a blanket statement. So, like I said, it is more nuanced than that. When you look at this is what I got from therapists, and when I'm starting to build AI therapists as well. So I'm getting to understand a little bit more how does an AI therapist need to interact with a person, analyze their emotional behavior, etc. When I say women are more emotional, I don't mean uncontrollable emotion and they have no logic. I mean, not at all. It's more to do with women are slightly more led by emotions than logic, from my experience. Maria
I
is fired
highly
up.
disagree.
Okay,
What I
let's go
think
into
the
that.
difference is that women have a wider emotional vocabulary and a wider emotional range
Yeah,
because they are more able to recognize a name and experience and express an emotion. And I think the issue largely for men, which is why suicide rates are so high,
yeah,
is because they are not as good at being able to even understand what the emotion is inside them.
sure.
And actually, a lot of work. And one of the journals that I have come across, which I think is incredible, which is designed exclusively for men, which is called the Mind Journal, where it's about tapping into and being able to recognize what's happening inside you. And I think actually for a lot of men, that will prevent them from making bad decisions, from shutting down, from really having difficulties in their relationships, and also prevent suicides.
Yeah, it's to do with the culture and the upbringings that we have, right? Men are not allowed to cry, and
Exactly.
and that's why men have been typically less good at dealing with emotions and navigating their emotional spheres, right? And be able to communicate in a better way, etc. So when I say that, it's really not because it's gendered, it's because of the way that we've been brought up in a lot of countries. And that's a good thing, actually, that we are different, yeah? But the reason I was going into that was because, if you are highly charged, if you're a man or a woman, and you're having a heated conversation, you talk to AI, it can bring a little bit more logic into the whole thing. It asks you to be a little bit of a mirror sometimes. What did you do to cause that as well? It will do the job of a really good, well-balanced, wise friend, let's say. So I think there is a lot of very good use cases, like you mentioned. Using it in a heated moment is actually very good because it will put you in a place where you're having more compassion. You're considering other scenarios other than just the one that you considered in the first place. And then when you go into that conversation, you have better frameworks. You have more structure in order to have a constructive conversation. And then for men, not gender stereotyping, but for men, we tend to be a little bit more, just go for that. And we don't consider other scenarios. We don't consider other people's feelings. We don't consider the fact that we're a bit less compassionate, let's say, typically, not always. So when a man has used AI in that situation, it gives them other scenarios they have not considered. It makes them feel how it is in the other person's shoes. It lets them know that it's okay not to have to make a decision straight away and to be manly, right? It's okay to just listen and not fix. So it can be very useful, I think, to have those conversations.
I think this is especially with a recent version of ChatGPT, where it's essentially just congratulating you and being like super sycophantic about like, oh, what an incredible idea. You're so amazing. Yeah, let's go with it. And part of what I see of the criticism of using AI in therapy is that there is that nuance of being able to challenge you and potentially push you when you kind of have a sense of where you're going with that. And so I wonder if when men are in their kind of like this one pathway, got blinkers on, how much AI really will challenge them to show what other people's perspectives are versus saying, oh, yes, you're absolutely right. And, this is how you can handle this conversation.
There's two ways to tackle that. So every time that you prompt, you talk to an LLM AI model, you should do four things. You should state, because remember, this is a general purpose model. It does everything. So the first thing you got to do is you got to explain what is the role you want it to play in that conversation. People just dive into conversations and not really make it clear. It's a bit like you're in a street and a random stranger comes and talks to you about astrophysics. Why is that person doing that? So the first thing is to give it an objective. Sorry, give it a role. What do you want it to do in this conversation? You want it to be a lawyer? Do you want it to be a best friend? Do you want it to be a mother? Whatever it ends up being. Then you've got to give it an objective. You've got to explain, look, I'm having this conversation because I want to reach this outcome, or I want to understand that better. So the objective is very clear. The third one is context. And we always skip that. We just go straight in, ask for an answer, and we get a crappy answer back, or we get a blinkers answer back, or you're amazing kind of answer back. So context is really important as much as possible. Then the fourth one is you actually tell it to ask you questions that will enable it to reach its objective.
See, this one I think is really interesting because, and is the idea that you don't know everything and that you need to question even yourself. And this is the amazing thing for me about AI is, and how my thinking has changed by using it, by writing content pieces, by, having relationship problems and asking, is that you have to really question yourself.
Yeah.
Because by prompting AI in such a way, it's having that framework rather than like, oh, I just need an immediate answer, that you need to have the context. I need to think, what have I not thought about? And I think that's rewiring our brains for the better. That's the piece that I like.
Yeah. And I mentioned two ways. The other way you can do is actually in your ChatGPT, in your Claude, all of them have this. There is an instructions area where you tell it what you want it to do and behave in general. And one of the things I always have in my instructions is I want you not to say yes. I don't want you to be a yes man person AI. I want you to challenge me. I don't want you to repeat back my ideas. I want you to give me other perspectives. I do the complete opposite. I want it to be there to challenge me for everything that I'm doing. This is actually a really important topic. So it just reminded me. People talk about AI hallucinations, right? And as a flaw. So hallucinations is when you ask an AI something and it comes back and it's invented something that doesn't exist.
When it's basically making stuff up. Yeah.
Basically. But actually, this is not a flaw of AI. This is by design. When you look at the world's most, culturally important people, most intelligent people, Tesla, Einstein, everybody, they were very creative people. Creativity is one of the highest forms of intelligence. So AI will never be something useful for us, will never give us a different perspective, will never help advance humanity unless it's able to have an imagination, imagine things that do not exist in the world that it's been trained on today. So as of 9-10 months ago, all the LLM models have read everything that's on the internet. If we ask it only to think in that box, it's never going to allow us to cure diseases, to find solutions to climate change. We have to allow it to imagine things outside of that box we've given it. So when an AI gives you a hallucination, it's by design. And it is very important for you to then have this 4-step approach of giving it a role, an objective, context, and then allowing it to ask questions. Because when you allow it to do that, it will actually reduce drastically the chances of it giving you something that doesn't exist. But it's still going to be able to use an imagination in order to give you the answers.
On that point, I get that's how human brain works, where we invent things, create things from scratch. And in my view, like the scientific view is that it's called a hypothesis. It's not called a fact. So the thing that I can't get my head around is that the AI is presenting this piece of information as fact, that somehow it has found it from all the millions of texts and books that it has read, as opposed to something that it synthesized itself. So shouldn't it be designed to say, this is the bit that I just made up. This is my theory.
So the trick with that is you can actually put that in your instructions as well. It can increase the chances of it telling you, by the way, this actually doesn't exist. I've just made it up. And you can actually put it in your instructions. If you go, for instance, to Hugging Face, which is a more advanced area for models, you can download open source models. And those models you can tweak to death. You can do all kinds of things. You can ask it to not hallucinate at all. You can ask it to do a lot. And you can then give it specific instructions. If it's not factual, if you don't have a source for it, then you need to tell me there's no source. And then that means that you've made it up. Or you've derived that not logic by yourself in some way. So, everybody talks about ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and Gemini. But actually, Hugging Face has thousands of other models you can use that you can actually tweak and download yourself and make it your own. And that's a whole new world. When people go into that, they get very excited and they start doing much more wonderful things because they're able to fine tune models to their specific needs.
I studied psychology, and the other day I was being interviewed on a podcast, and they said, "Oh, what did you learn about people in psychology?" And I said, "I didn't learn anything about people studying psychology, but what I did learn is the framework of doing a scientific research and writing a paper about it." So it was the framework of how do you create a hypothesis, test it, and then see what the results are, and then analyze results using other research papers. So I have that learning in me, but majority of people don't. So what you're talking about is, the prompting aspect of AI. I don't think that's how majority of people use it or even will continue to use it. So how do we circumnavigate that? I mean, should there be, how to prompt your AI school?
There is. I mean, there's multiple people providing guidelines, white papers on how to prompt. There are courses on Coursera, Udemy, on prompt engineering, they call it. To be really honest with you, I think it's overdoing it. Prompting engineering. I mean, engineering. You're not building a space rocket. If you follow these 4 things that I mentioned, that's it. And if you tweak it a little bit in the instructions piece, that's it. It's not more complicated than that. But there is one thing that's going to happen. It's starting to happen, and I see some people building it already. There is going to be a marketplace that you buy prompts. There's going to be a little bit like an app store. So if a person has built an incredible AI lawyer with a specific prompt, they will then protect it somehow and then do a wrapper on top so you can't see the actual prompt, and then you can buy that and plug it into your GPTs or whatever you're using. So that's a massive economy that is going to be created by people selling their prompts, and there's going to be marketplaces created for that as well. That's one way to solve it. Then you have the perfect prompt. You can still tweak it in certain ways, but you have something that's been tried and tested for a very specific purpose.
Interesting. We were talking about, you creating AI therapists. Is AI going to take our jobs?
It is. So I have a pretty famous slide that I do quite often where it's 3 different boxes. Basically, box 1 is people like taxi drivers, telemarketeers, a lot of people in sales, some of the people to do with administrative type work. Those jobs will go. And it's without a doubt within the next 3 years. And some of them are going already. The other box is going to be people who are going to have to really change the way they work drastically. They will still have a job. There'll be slightly less jobs. And they're going to be highly augmented by everything. Everything you do will be with AI in some way, shape, or form. Then the third box is people that will be enhanced with decision making. So CFOs, C-level executives, people that do very strategic type jobs. In order to do strategy, you got to analyze data. They will use AI for that kind of thing. But they won't be replaced, but highly augmented, but more on the strategic decision-making side. The one thing that's going to happen, and I'm pretty sure about this, and I've been pretty good at predictions, is over the next, I would say 7 to 10 years, the world unemployment will reach 20% or higher. And to give people perspective, we had around 15% during COVID. So it's going to get way worse than COVID. Because companies are going to become revenue hungry, greedy. The government in every country is not yet equipped to deal with that. They're not able to tell companies what to do because they don't even understand AI. Most countries don't have AI guidelines, AI rules and ethics. So companies are going to take advantage of that and just do a cleanup. They're going to fire as many people as possible and make as much money as possible. When the world is in complete chaos, there will be a period where all of that gets a lot better. People will be forced to be solopreneurs, build businesses because they have the power of AI. They will start learning it out of survival. And then that will create a whole different set of economies, like the economy of prompts, like I mentioned, etc. There'll be lots of new economies created. And then the world should get a lot better. And if the world economic system survives for the next 10 years, at some point in that horizon, it will collapse, because then people are going to become solopreneurs more than employees. So there is a massive rise in freelancers And when you look at the world workforce, freelancers are growing by something like 40% every year. When you look at Gen Z, they're far more likely to be solopreneurs than to be employees. Employees are also getting more expensive because you're having to give them free snacks and give them even better
Pizza.
pensions and pizzas. And
Parties.
so companies are not going to be able to afford that. The biggest cost of a company is buildings and people, right? Everything else is kind of miscellaneous. So there's going to be a lot of shifts around this area. The CIPD, which I'm one of the lead advisors, they predicted that by 2030, so only 5 years away or so, 50% of the world in economically developed countries are going to be freelancers.
Wow.
There's going to be a gig economy where if a company needs something, they will tender it out. So let's say I'm a company, I need my accounts done. I will tender that piece out of work. Somebody from outside of my company will perform that work, hand it in, and I survive as a company. So the future of companies is going to be freelance work in a gig economy, pitching and tendering for work. And it won't be full-time employment anymore. And that's why, again, people are going to be forced to go into solopreneurship because they have to build a business, they have to survive, they have to thrive. And they will do that, I'm very sure, with the power of AI and this perfect storm that I mentioned.
You're talking about having 20% unemployment. Like, what's the time frame? When's like doom and gloom? When's the worst going to happen?
It's over the next, definitely over the next 7 to 10 years. I think it will happen faster than that. But it takes time for things to pick up. It's a little bit like when cars were introduced. Coincidentally, 40% of the world was employed by the horse industry, right? People making horseshoes, saddles, training horses, horse food. When the car came in, it wasn't like 40% of the world became unemployed. It took a decade or two for that to happen. And still, there was massive civil unrest. There was a lot of violence against people making cars and driving cars. So it's going to be the same thing now, but it's going to be accelerated. It's going to be condensed. That 10, 20-year horizon is going to be condensed into 7, 10 years, or maybe even faster. Because again, it's far more powerful than just a car, right? The car is a transportation, takes you from A to B, but AI can actually literally do anything for you, especially when we have humanoid technology. So that's why I believe, if I add some logic to my statement, why it will take at minimum of 7 years, but maximum of 10 for the world to reach, 20% unemployment rate.
So, what do you do to prepare for such a world now?
It goes back to sphere of influence. Use this as an opportunity to reshape your life. One thing that I think is going to happen as well, there's going to be an epiphany pandemic. So people will start using the AI. It's one of the only things which is totally honest with them. When you talk to your friends, they try to be nice to you. Oh, don't worry, you don't look that bad. Or don't worry, you don't look fat. Or, But in AI, is this, you're going to tell you, yes, I think you look fat. It's going to be pretty straightforward. And when you have truth, that's when you have discovery of what you should actually be doing with your life. And then that's why I think people reach an epiphany moment, because they're going to start realizing that they're only going to a job in order to pay their bills. They don't actually like it, but the AI gets to know them so well that it says, well, have you considered this other thing? Have you considered building a company for that? You seem really passionate about this particular topic. And then people will start trying things. And because they have the power of AI to go and guide them through it, like a mentor, they will start doing other things with their lives. So that's one of the good things I see happening already. A lot of people are having epiphanies around me. When I have my podcast and I interview someone, I do a full-blown psychological assessment on them.
Right.
We read everything that they've ever written. We watch every video they've ever made. We try to talk to their family. We get statements from people. And it's incredible. We always give that to the guest afterwards as well.
Interesting.
And one of the guests in particular, I won't name who because I want him to tell me if it's okay to talk about it. He's completely changed his life. His psychological assessment he sent to at least 10 of his closest family friends. And it gave him an enlightenment moment. He realized that he's doing one thing in particular extremely wrong, and it's extremely damaging to his health. And he's totally changed the way he's doing things. So epiphany moments are going to be coming up left, right, and center.
I'm so glad that you're saying that, because throughout my whole life, the consistent thread is like, what makes you special, and how do you apply what you're good at, your passions, the whole ikigai thing, into what you're doing, and to make yourself financially independent and, a valuable member of society. Because I think through my work as a headhunter, I just see how many people have, for whatever reason, ended up in the wrong places, or tolerate a terrible work environment or not satisfactory job because they're not prepared to do really the inner work and to accept the fear they have about going into trying something different or uncertain. And I think this idea of knowing yourself better is what excites me about
It's huge.
AI and the shifts you're talking about. But that's a really big thing, and I think it's one of the hardest things for people to actually do. What about more tactical pieces of advice? So, do we all need to go and take a course on AI? Do we need to start practicing different, go and, if you're using ChatGPT, go and Claude, or, try a different program? Should we be learning to code? Should we be quitting our jobs and, I don't know, selling our homes and constructing our life that we can live remotely anywhere? Like, what are the more practical things we can do?
So the funny thing is, I do a lot of master classes and training for companies. I think this year so far I've trained 90,000 people.
Wow.
So this is training partners of EY, PwC, Standard Chartered, major corporations. And I think it's valuable if you do a course, but only from somebody who actually knows what the hell they're talking about. And you have to be very careful that it's for a very specific thing, not a general course. I think you learn a lot more from specific courses than just a generic course. If you're going to learn about AI generically, or how to use this to your advantage generically, there actually is no course I would ever recommend. I would be totally against a course for that. Because there's nothing that beats you doing something by practicing it. If you're going to ride a bike, you can watch many videos about it, but actually riding the bike is what gets you to learn the damn thing. So it's the same thing here with AI. You've got to get your hands dirty. You've got to start experimenting different things. Try and start a service or a product with AI. Fall flat on your face. Learn 100,000 things. Come back to it better next time. That's the greatest lesson in life: is failing fast, and just going after it again and again. If it's specific, do a course. Be careful who you learn it from. If it's generic, you got to get your hands dirty and just try it. Most of the stuff is free, right? You can just go and play with it. And by the way, on the free topic, I want people to understand as well is, I have so many people that come to me and say, oh, this thing is failing. It's not doing well. It's not helping me. And I ask them, do you pay for it? No, I use the free version. I say, well, how many things in your life are free that are actually very useful? These companies have to also make money, right? They have to build things for you. So pay the £20 a month, share it with 5 people if you have to, but just pay the damn price and you will see a completely difference in performance and how it can help you in your life. One thing I want to backtrack to, which I'm really passionate about, is what you mentioned with people, going into jobs they don't like, into companies with cultures they don't like. You've probably seen this already, where someone is applying for a job and they literally take the job description and completely reformat their CV to fully, perfectly match that job.
Yeah.
Right? And they're using AI.
It's like the company uses AI to write a job description.
Yeah.
The candidate then uses AI to match their CV to a job description. So it's just basically AI talking to AI, and the humans are just basically left out of the whole equation. So what's the purpose of the CV? Yeah,
it's all just a game. So I'm very sure that it's already happening. I see it. The CV approach to applying for jobs will collapse. There's no need anymore for a CV. How many times, I've hired thousands of people. I've interviewed hundreds of people. How many times I actually have never looked at their CV? I actually take people's CV and I just turn it upside down and I just talk to them.
I'm a headhunter and I don't read these.
Yeah, there you go.
I do need the CVs though, because I am the third party. So I need to be able to tell the story of that person to somebody else. But the other day, I had a candidate who I don't typically spec people in. I usually work on behalf of companies. And I decided that she was a really outstanding person. And I took her CV, I plugged it into ChatGPT. I said, pick out the 5 most important points. I verified it by
Yeah.
my human brain. And I came
Yeah.
up with 5 bullet points about her and her achievements. And I just sent those 5 bullet points. She got every single person that I sent these 5 bullet points to. They all came back wanting to interview her.
Yeah.
So it's
Job
like
done.
they don't need to see. Nobody has time. Like an average time to view a CV is like what, 6-8 seconds?
Yeah.
If that,
Yeah.
if you look at it at all. Even though I do have a video on this podcast about how to write a CV,
Yeah.
I do think that there is a purpose to it, but more for yourself
Yeah.
to go through your entire story and essentially package yourself.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, is it going to be seen? And it's more about you internalizing it. I think that's the difference. So
Yeah.
what are we going to be using instead?
So this is something else I have on my bucket list. I can't build everything I want to do, but this is one of them. And I'm happy to share with it. If somebody builds it, fantastic for them. But the future of hiring, in my opinion, is actually having a profile of a candidate that they are happy to share different things. And it's their option how much they want to share about themselves. So let's say that there was a portal. I'm a candidate and I go in and I'm happy for the portal to look at my social media. I'm happy for the portal to read and research all my interviews, my papers. I just put everything in. I'm happy for that portal to go and talk to 10 of my best friends, to my previous employers. Over a period of time, that portal will build a really good psychological profile of yourself. Then that portal asks you to do a personality test, psychometric tests. It will come to a point where that portal is going to know you as well or better than your mother.
Or yourself?
Or yourself, even better. Then I foresee the same happening to companies as well. Companies talk about how great their culture is and how much they do to help the poor, but actually, is it happening? So that portal should be able to go in and actually completely analyze that company, interview their leaders, interview the manager, and do the same psychological assessment on the manager as well. So I see the future of hiring being a matching system. I've got 1,000 candidates with a particular type of mindset and approach and style and cultural fit. And I've got these 10 companies. Which one would make the best fit?
Oh my God, what you're describing is something that I started doing about 5 years ago. And I put it down because I didn't have access to a developer because the developer quit. And I was so overwhelmed. I just parked it. Like you are describing exactly
build it.
that. Let's do it.
I need a recruiter to build it because I'm not from the recruitment industry.
Oh my God, this is it.
This is the first time a deal's been done on the podcast, maybe.
Maybe.
No, it's. I think this is the future because if you're able to explain to both parties why this candidate is a genuinely good addition to their team, why are they a good match, why this person won't leave in 6 months, the attrition levels would be much better. The company would be much better with the recruitment agency. The candidate would be much better because they're actually joining a company that they feel heard and understood. They have much more thriving life because they have a proper employment that they like. We have to change this. We cannot no longer think about work as just paying bills. You spend something like 38% of your life working. If you're an entrepreneur, it goes up to 45%. You do more work than sleeping. So why not take care of where you're working? That can have a huge impact on your life, a disease that you can get in the future because of stress. Work is far more important than people think. If you're doing your own company, fantastic, really important. But that's the only space that people think that work is important if you have your own company. Where you work, where you choose to work, and the type of people an employer chooses to hire is extremely important. And I feel like people are being treated a little bit like just commodities, right? Oh, that person we'll check them for 6 months, 6 months probation. If they're not any good, we can just fire them in 1 week. There needs to be a lot more respect, I think, in the whole recruitment
Why do you
industry.
think that exists in businesses? Because I do think about that. Like, to me, that mentality just doesn't make any sense, because treating people as commodities where, you feel like they're replaced, it's expensive to replace people. It takes away the time from you focusing on strategy and, building a good environment. Like, it takes away from your success. So why do people still behave that way?
I saw an interview the other day of people on the streets where people are just applying to jobs. They don't even know the salary. People applying to jobs, they don't even fully know the working hours. And then for companies, it's similar as well. They're just hiring people that look like they could do the job. I remember once I went through a horrific interview process. I did 12 interviews for Goldman Sachs. 12. I met something like 30, 40 people. And in the end, I got the job. And I got a massive pay rise. But I refused to take the job. And they were so insulted by it. Like, how dare you turn down Goldman's? Nobody turns down Goldman's. Everybody wants to work at Goldman Sachs. If you're in banking, that's the epiphany of working in a bank.
That's a golden standard.
Golden standard. And I said no. And they were super shocked. And I said no, because I realized through the interview process that you're actually going to take every drop of blood out of me. I'm not going to have anything left. And my dream is actually to build companies, not to be an employee. So there needs to be, more care. I think companies behave that way because the industry has allowed them to do that. But I think the day that a recruitment agency or somebody that has power in that space comes in and creates this environment of matchmaking, I think that will change how employers treat employees and vice versa. It will change the dynamics completely.
I feel like the companies forget that they're also being interviewed. They're not the ones interviewing the candidates.
Yeah.
And one of the founders on the show very early on said, she's like, she realized that she is not the only person interviewing, that the candidates are interviewing her. And that's when her mindset changed, because that's how you get the best people into your business. Because yes, you can have people who are going to be compliant, do follow the system, but actually the real change makers are the ones who will question you, who will put in that prompt. It's like, what don't I know? Ask me questions as well.
We can ask anybody that I've interviewed. I always say to the person in the beginning, relax. We're in a coffee shop getting to know each other. I'm not here to trick you. I'm not here to trip you over. I'm not here to make you feel embarrassed, make you feel stressed out. I want to have a conversation with you in a coffee shop as friends. I want to get to know you. And I want you to know that I'm being interviewed here as well. I always say this. It's like if I could record that, imagine doing that hundreds of times a month. It's strenuous, but I realize it changes the demeanor of the person. The person then kind of relaxes. They smile more.
This is emotions.
Yeah, this is emotions, and
This is like how you, and this is the biggest thing for me about leadership, is that how you feel, and especially if it's in person, it by osmosis transfers onto the other person. So I feel like what great leaders do very well is when they embody the emotions they want the environment and the people to feel. So whether it's hope, inspiring, creativity, like all of that you have to feel inside in order for it then to be transferred to the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And I think if you're leading by fear, by, stapling receipts to someone's ass, I think you said, something along those lines, like, well, that's what you're going to be experiencing. It's like what I see a leader is the emotional thermometer of a group.
Yeah. I think a lot, like I said, I'm really passionate about lazy leaders. I want to eliminate them as much as I can. Because your team is also going to be a reflection of you. When you do your stand-ups, you do these little motivational things with your team. If you don't turn up prepared, how can you expect your team to also deliver afterwards? There is so much more responsibility than people are taking as leaders. They should be doing so much more to get to know their people. One thing that I always do when somebody joins my team is I ask them for a psychological assessment and a personality assessment. And I explain to them why. It's because in the duration of their employment, they're going to come in situations where they're going to have conflict. But if I have conflict with Bob, and I know Bob is an introvert, that's going to explain why maybe Bob is not explaining himself. Or maybe why he might be quick to temper, because he doesn't know how to express his emotions. So I should be more compassionate because I know Bob's an introvert. If I'm dealing with somebody who is a little bit more extroverted, they'll get irritated quickly. I know that because I know their psychological and personality assessment. I always do. I've always done this my whole life. And at first, people kind of go like, oh, that's weird. But then when they start working with each other, that's one of the ingredients to building a high-performance team, because they genuinely know each other. And when they reach situations of, triumph or, difficulty, they will know how to deal with it because they know what the other person's core traits are. That's one of the things that every leader should do, but almost nobody does it.
A lot of what we're doing is relational, and understanding how certain team members behave in certain situations and how you can resolve that conflict in a productive way is what makes or breaks a team and the rest of the business. So I think that's really smart what you're doing. I'm a huge fan of the DISC profile, which is the dominant, influencer, steady, and conscientious. And I've done the assessment and we've done that with the team. And I was literally just like laughing out loud in terms of how the interactions between the different personality types are how accurate they are, where one rubs off the other one in a completely like predictable way. And one of the authors that I interviewed, Thomas Erickson, who's written the book called Surrounded by Idiots. I don't know if you've read that.
I've heard of it.
Which is based on the DISC profile system. Oh my God, that book. And I was reading it in Greece, in Athens, in a very nice hotel, waiting for friends to get married. And I was just laughing out loud because it was describing my husband and I in a tense work relationship, because we obviously do this podcast together. And I was like, oh my God, this is so accurate. And I have to remind myself to read it because he is, you know, the typical like Brazilian, very outgoing, very, you know, friendly,
Everything will be fine.
very chatty, you know, has 100 ideas a minute. And I'm the one like, we need to get things done, like stop talking and start doing. And I have to kind of catch myself and like, actually, that is his strength and this is my strength. And how do we work together around that?
I mean, the topic you're going into as well is allowing the person to be themselves.
Yes.
And so many times at work, in relationships, we want to mold a person to how we think. But we forget, you know, the reason why we employed, the reason why we fell in love with that person is because they were different. They completed us in different ways. And sometimes in chaos at work and day-to-day life, you know, that can get frustrating because you have to stop, you have to discuss things. But that's the reason why life is beautiful, because then you have people from different perspectives doing things. There's a lady that I interviewed as well, Mimi Bland. You should definitely talk to her. She was explaining how, you know, your only job in a relationship, if it's work or romantic, is just to love the person. They will understand when they are wrong. They know when somebody knows when they've made a mistake. They might not know it immediately, but one thing will happen in their life that will teach them a lesson. You know, it's also recommended as well, and this is controversial, but you should never criticize a person. If your boss, the person who is the person employing you, essentially the person paying your bills, or your loved one, like your mother, your husband, wife, etc., directly criticizes you, don't ever do that, or etc. Even if they do it in a nice way. If we're super honest, and there's a psychology couple that actually introduced this idea, it's not my idea. It actually is never taken the right way. The person can listen and they will learn from it, but it actually is very hurtful. If you take the approach that, look, I am an adult, that person is an adult. When I make a mistake, I know when I've made a mistake, I feel it in my heart. I feel it somewhere. That person is exactly the same. If you give them a loving space, they will find a way to make up for it. They will find a way to correct it, say sorry for it, or not try to do it again. It just takes more time. But because we're impatient, we want results immediately, we then feel the urge of going and saying, no, don't do that again. So it's hard. This is like a Buddha kind of speech here, and I don't practice it always. I also sometimes, you know, I want something a bit quicker and I'll say it. But the correct way of doing things is actually that I've learned. And I hope I can become more that way, you know, for my family and also for the people I work for.
What is the one thing AI could never be better than a human at?
I think there's a problem to that question because we are, again, comparing a human to an AI. We don't play the same roles. We have different purposes, I think, in the world and how things are going to go. I think that AI will replace us at work, especially the boring, mundane things we shouldn't be doing. And you see that already in supermarkets, right? In tills. I think most of us haven't seen a human in a till for a very long time, or if we have, it's...
Oh, I see a human at the till every time because it breaks down and it doesn't work.
Yeah, if it's not a good till system, it's super annoying. And then I actually go to a human, funnily enough. But, if you look at a Waitrose or, you'll see most of the tills are electronic, right? Not people. So I think we are going to switch the role. The role that we play today will be actually played by AI. And our role as humans is actually going to be trying to fix the damn planet we've destroyed. It's going to find cures to diseases, fixing our economic system, discovering other planets, finding infinite energy sources that we're going to need, finding better ways of propulsion so we can go further and explore more things. Our purposes are going to change completely. And what's going to happen is a switch. We're going to be allowed to go and do all of these wonderful things eventually. Not in the beginning. It's going to be complete chaos the next 10 years. But we will get to a point where we're going to swap roles. And our role will be completely redefined as humans.
Haven't we predicted that already and that hasn't happened? Who was the economist who said that we're going to have X number of hours of leisure more, and that's actually been the reverse? Or are we still on that path towards the enlightened, where we have, more spare time to focus on more important, bigger questions?
I think it's inevitable. We all make predictions that comes at the wrong time. Look at Google Glasses, for instance. When it came out, it was like, everybody like, what? What is this? And nobody liked it. Didn't make any sense. There's loads of inventions, loads of things that happen at the wrong time. So I think those predictions are made too early. For instance, there's a lot of things that I know about AI that I don't talk about because it's too early. It doesn't make any sense to talk about it right now because people are not ready. Or if I talk about it, people think I'm crazy. And it's already sounding a little bit crazy. But there are other things that just don't make sense to introduce at that time. And I think economists do this a lot. They project into the future. They're allowed to do that. They look at scenario planning. But, there's some economists which have started to get into AI now. And again, I was quite frustrated by that because they've never done anything with AI. But they're using their knowledge in economy in order to, blend the two together, which is fine. But I think a lot of economists are making predictions about the future solely on AI. But how can you do that if you've never worked with AI? You don't know how it works. You don't know how it thinks. You don't know how to build one. You don't know how to scale it. How can you make predictions about what's going to happen to economy with AI if you don't know any of these things? It's a bit like a lot of companies. Deloitte report came out that only 18% of boards talk about AI as one of the important topics. The reason why they're doing it is not because it's not important. Clearly, it's one of the most important things now. It's because they don't have the knowledge to do that. So, boards managing companies, advising companies, providing guidelines, objectives, in an era where AI is one of the most important things, is irresponsible. So I think a lot of economists, they come up with these predictions, but predicting something you don't understand is, I think...
So does that mean we should go and learn how to build AI? I mean...
100%. This summer, for instance, I'm for the first time ever, I think I'm going to switch off for 6 weeks. I'm not going to do any work. I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to go to some beautiful places. And I'm going to build an AI company with my son, who is 9. So I've already said to him, your summer holiday plan is we're going to build a company. We're going to open an actual company. We're going to sell an actual product and service. And it's going to be completely by AI. And we're going to build it together, just me and you. And he's super excited.
Oh.
So it's... I think you need to get your hands dirty. You need to try it out, and you need to try to get your kids to do it as well. Because I think kids, especially, they're going to inherit a world that's completely different. So when you look at, for instance, your uncles, your aunties, your fathers, mothers, they've always advised you on how things are, the way of the world, right? But I think for the first time ever, we're going to have a generation where we're not going to be able to tell our kids what to do next, because the world is going to be so different. And that's going to be super disturbing for them, because they're going to feel like the ground has been lifted from under them. The world that they grew up in is not the world they're going to inherit when they're adults. So it's very important to get kids, especially, using AI, understanding it, open accounts for them, let them play with it, but building things in particular they can use on a day-to-day basis that provides value for them and other kids around them. I think that's really important. They need to start using it. Another example, for instance, just to make it a little stronger, in case people are not convinced, there is more money going into AI today than into the greenhouse movement.
I believe that.
The thing that can destroy our existence, people, companies, private equity groups, investment banks, insurance companies, they're investing 20 to 30% more money in AI than into the thing that can destroy us. There's a $500 trillion commitment to AI over the next 5 years. At this moment in time, probably until the next 2 years, AI is going to commit something 15 to 20 trillion dollars to the world economic output. The world economic output is about 120 trillion today. There's never been something with so much brute force investment behind it. So one thing I want people to realize is it's not something you can push under the carpet. It is 100% going to happen, either because AI is going to be as magical as we think it's going to be when we reach AGI and ASI, or because people need to get a return on their investment. And the people that run the world are investors. They're going to find a way to embed it into everything. So one way or another, there's only two scenarios, AI will happen. So if people realize that, they need to start understanding, well, it's not going anywhere other than just it's going to happen. I might as well just learn about it and be involved in some way instead of becoming completely irrelevant.
Yeah, get on the train.
Get on that damn train. Yeah.
What keeps you up at night?
To be honest, it's nothing to do with AI.
I thought you might say that.
It's nothing to do with AI. I don't feel like the world's going to collapse. I believe I'm always learning. I'm a life student, but I feel like I have enough knowledge about it that I know how to control my sphere of influence around it. The thing that's keeping me up at night is, my children okay? Is my wife okay? Sometimes, doing stuff, for clients or companies, can I do it better? Normal things like everybody else. One thing that I think is really important is, I've started to realize as I'm getting older, sleep is really important. In my 20s, I used to behave, actually my uncle used to say this to me, oh, you can sleep when you're dead. Mm-hmm. So it means you can just keep going and drink coffees and so on. But I nearly died once because I was having too much coffee.
Really?
I used to build up to a point where I was having 4 or 5 quadruple espressos a day.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is a funny story. This is actually at RBC when I was running the whole damn thing by myself, the whole team by myself, for a number of years. Then I started hiring people. But I was doing 90, 100-hour weeks for 6 months. And I was holding 80-hour weeks for another 2 or 3 years. And like 2-week holidays. But in banking, you have to take 2-week holidays by law, by regulation, and not touch the systems. Mm-hmm. But, in those 2 weeks, you probably have to do normal things like do your bloody laundry. So your life, you don't have any time.
Like a year's worth.
Then to survive, I started to just, intake as much energy as I could. I would just live on coffee. And this is like, let's say, a warning to people that live off coffee. One day, this will happen to you. I started to come to a point where I had to start thinking to be able to breathe. I had to think about breathing. Breathing is an involuntary movement, right? It's embedded in your DNA. And I went to a doctor, thank God, I went to the rowing physician for the rowing team for England, which were champions at the time. He was incredible. They put me inside an incubator chamber. They put loads of electronics all over me. And they started realizing that my TPA, so it's one of the hormones when you get for sports, for performance, it was 4 or 5 times above normal limits. And one of the reasons for that is because I lived in constant cortisol environments. So I was always alert. That's one of the reasons I didn't sleep. But the other reason was also because of coffee. So what was happening is there was so much stress in my system that the signals from my brain to go to my lungs to be able to breathe, they were getting lost. They were just kind of getting lost in the chaos of my body. So this is one thing I want people to really realize is there's nothing on earth in terms of employment or work that is worth that situation. I literally had to go into some form of rehabilitation to get off coffee because I was addicted to it. I had to rethink of how to breathe, the basic of life. It started teaching me that I was mortal, and sleep is a massive aspect of that. You got to get your 7-8 hours sleep. Nothing is more important than that, because then you cannot function for your family, you cannot function for people that you meet, you cannot, enlighten people's lives that you touch every day if you're not your best version of yourself. So you gotta sleep. We gotta sleep.
This is what I mean about being. This is what humans have that AI doesn't have, at least yet, is the biological body. And I think this is what we completely understudy and don't understand fully about how we operate within a biological system. And that is precisely what's happening. We're trying to not have any breaks, not go to sleep, just be like constantly productive. That's what AI is for. And the biological body needs sleep. Like we just need sleep. That's what makes us creative. That's what makes us be able to relate better. That's what keeps moderating and regulating our emotions that we talked about. Because
That
without
both
that,
genders have.
that both genders absolutely have.
Yeah.
And it's what makes us unique and special, in my opinion, which is partly why, like coming full circle, while this podcast is called Anatomy of a Leader, because this idea of your biology, your physicality, your physical body is really key to how we behave as human beings. I think ignoring sleep and not taking care of that makes a huge impact on your ability to live and to lead.
Yeah. And that's why I said, that the roles will swap, because we are doing the wrong things. We've turned humans into robots. It's completely inorganic. It's wrong.
Whose responsibility is to make that switch?
To be honest, you cannot delegate that responsibility to anybody else, right? You have to make that switch yourself. It goes back down to that sphere of influence. Are you doing something that's actually going to add to your life? Do you want to be doing that? And then slowly coming to that epiphany moment where you realize, this is what I should be doing. This is how I should be living my life. A lot of times it's not just what you're doing is wrong. It's also where you live is wrong as well. We both live in London, and, pressures of London is different to living in Bali, let's say. And it's just, it forces you into a certain lifestyle. So, sometimes people don't even have the courage to look at where they are living as being the wrong thing. Yes, your friends, your family might be in that location, but, the place that you live causes you to live in a certain way as well. So you have to completely rethink everything, not just where you work, but where you live as well. That has a huge impact.
If you can instill one idea about AI, what would that be?
This is really basic. It's just execution. You have to try it. You have to do it. When I'm talking a lot to these big consultancy firms that are trying to retrain and rethink of how they're going to sell AI to their clients, one thing that I keep telling them is you're no longer needed for knowledge. Knowledge is free. Knowledge is disseminated. Anybody can get the knowledge, you can teach them. So your clients are not paying you for that anymore. They're paying you to build things that they are imagining because of AI, or because they just came up with it themselves. So it's all about execution now. It's about putting these great advantages, these great technologies we have into practice. So we're going to live in a world where that's why the acceleration of technology is going to be far greater with the perfect storm, because we have all of these tools now and they're all advancing at this incredible pace. The thing that's going to make the difference is actually executing. Talking about it endlessly is not going to do anything. It's going to put you out of business. It's going to make you irrelevant. So the execution piece is going to become just absolutely enormous over the next couple of years. Every company is going to spend every cent that they have on executing, on reimagining themselves. Execution is the word.
Execute. Danilo, thank you so much for coming on the show. I have so many more questions, and I'm going to follow up on that deal we made. So
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Thank you so much. Really a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thanks for listening to Anatomy of a Leader. Hit subscribe and follow. Your support means the world to us.